The internal audit figures on my screen were beautiful, too beautiful. Beneath the perfect green cells of the spreadsheet, I could feel the red ink bleeding through. My phone buzzed on the glass table with a text from him telling me to be at the stage exactly on time. I looked down at the fake wedding band on my finger. People think a gun is the quickest way to destroy a life in Texas, but they are wrong. It is a signature. My name is Marin Calloway. I am 34 years old, and in the high-stakes world of Austin Tech, silence is often the loudest weapon I possess. I sat in the glass-walled conference room of Brindlecrest Systems, looking out over the sweltering Texas skyline. The air conditioning hummed a low, artificial note that matched the temperature in my veins perfectly. On the tablet before me, the internal audit figures glowed with a reassuring, vibrant green. Revenue was up by 12%. Operating costs were down by 8%. It was flawless. It was a lie. I stared at the numbers, and I did not see profit. I saw the hemorrhage. I saw the frantic attempts to cover tracks, the digital equivalent of sweeping shattered glass under a rug. To anyone else, this spreadsheet was a success story, but to me, it was a confession written in Excel. The red ink was screaming beneath the surface, waiting for someone with the right eyes to expose it. My phone vibrated against the mahogany table, shattering the stillness. The screen lit up with a message from Gavin Mercer, my fiancé, the man I was supposed to marry in less than 24 hours. Be at the stage on time. You'll love the surprise. I read it twice. The confidence in those words was palpable. He thought he was being romantic, or perhaps he thought he was being clever. I typed back a single word, sure. I set the phone down face up. He thinks he is directing. I whispered to the empty room, my voice flat. He thinks he is the one holding the script. Seconds later, the phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call. Elijah Klein. I swiped right and brought the phone to my ear, keeping my eyes fixed on the false profit margins on the screen. Marin. Elijah's voice was gravel and granite. The file is ready. When you nod, we push the button. Is everything in order? I asked, my voice steady, devoid of the tremor a bride should have the day before her wedding. Everything, Elijah confirmed. The trusts, the IP transfer blocks, the forensic accounting. It is all loaded in the chamber. We just need the trigger. You will have it, I said. Tonight. I hung up and looked at my left hand. The diamond on my ring finger caught the overhead light, fracturing it into a spectrum of cold colors. It was a beautiful ring. It was also a fake, a cubic zirconia replica I had commissioned 3 weeks ago. The real ring, a 3-carat vintage piece that Gavin had allegedly bought with his hard-earned savings, was currently sitting in a fireproof safe in Elijah's office. It was not jewelry anymore. It was Exhibit A. It was evidence of funds siphoned from my own company accounts to pay for the symbol of his ownership over me. The signs had been there for 6 months. Subtle as a hairline fracture in a dam, it started with the passwords. Gavin suddenly became concerned about cybersecurity, changing the admin access codes to our shared home network. Then came the hotel itineraries left open on his iPad suites booked in Las Vegas and Miami. On weekends, he claimed to be at developer conferences. And then there was his mother, Darlene Mercer. I could still hear her shrill voice from the engagement party, holding court with the Austin elite. My son built all of this from zero. She had declared, gesturing around my house, drinking my champagne. He is a self-made man. I had smiled then, sipping my water, watching Gavin preen under her praise. He had looked at me with a challenge in his eyes, daring me to correct her. I had not. I had let them build their castle on the sand. I stood up, smoothing the front of my silk blouse. I picked up the tablet and locked the screen, turning the beautiful lies into black nothingness. They expected a blushing bride. They expected a woman who would crumble at public humiliation. They had no idea that I had already grieved this relationship months ago, between lines of bank statements and property records. I walked toward the door. I don't believe in destiny. I believe in documentation. The cypress and gold pavilion did not look like a wedding venue. It looked like a set for a reality television finale. Spotlights cut through the darkened room, sweeping over the faces of 150 guests. Tablets were propped up on tables, live streaming the event to extended family and, knowing Gavin, probably half of his professional network. Gavin led me to the center of the stage. His grip on my hand was firm, not affectionate. It was possessive. He tapped the microphone. Feedback whined for a split second before his voice boomed out, smooth and practiced. "Marin," he said, turning to face me. The spotlight hit his eyes, making them glint. "I brought everyone here tonight because I believe in truth." He paused for effect. "He was enjoying this. I cannot marry you," he announced. The room did not gasp. The silence was heavy, confused. "I have discovered that you have been hiding assets," Gavin continued, his voice gaining strength, projecting to the back row. "You have been using me. You used my name, my connections to climb a social ladder you could never reach on your own. I will not be a pawn in your financial games anymore." It was a masterful projection. He was accusing me of the very crime he was committing. Then came the sound. It started from the front table. Clapping. I looked down. Harold Mercer, Gavin's father, was standing up. He was applauding. He threw his head back and laughed, a loud, barking sound, as if he were watching a contestant get eliminated from a game show. The rest of the Mercer family joined in, a ripple of cheers rising against the confusion of my own relatives. Darlene Mercer stepped onto the stage. She was wearing a dress that cost more than my first car, and she was dragging a silver carry-on suitcase. She stopped in front of me and shoved the handle toward my chest. "Your things are packed," she said. Then she leaned in, close to the microphone on Gavin's lapel, ensuring the live stream caught every syllable. "Don't expect to take a penny from this family. My son worked too hard for gold diggers like you to leech off him. The humiliation was designed to be total. They wanted tears. They wanted me to beg. They wanted the breakdown to be broadcast in high definition. I looked at the suitcase. I looked at Gavin, who stood with his chest puffed out, the grieving hero saving himself just in time. I smiled. It was not a nervous smile. It was the soft, terrifying smile of someone who watches a child play with a loaded gun. I leaned forward, invading Gavin's personal space just enough to reach the microphone stand. "Congratulations," I said, my voice clear, steady, and amplified. "You won." The applause faltered. The room froze. Harold stopped laughing. This was not in the script. I was supposed to scream. I was supposed to deny it. Gavin blinked, his confidence wavering for a fraction of a second. He misinterpreted my calm. He thought it was submission. He thought I was bowing out to save face. "I am glad you accept it," Gavin said, regaining his footing. He gestured to the wings of the stage. "And to ensure the separation of our assets is handled correctly, I have brought in my new financial advisor to oversee the transition. Ladies and gentlemen, Victor Raines." A man walked out from the shadows. He was sleek, wearing a suit that was tailored to the millimeter. He nodded to the crowd, radiating the quiet menace of a shark in a swimming pool. I looked at Victor. I looked at the way he stood next to Gavin, not as a hired consultant, but as a handler. The pieces clicked into place with a violent clarity. The accusations of financial hiding, the public spectacle to discredit my character, the sudden introduction of a third party to handle assets. This was not a drama about love. This was a robbery with an audience. I turned my back on the blinding stage lights, and the sea of faces contorted with gleeful pity. The murmurs followed me like a physical weight, a buzzing swarm of gossip that would be trending on local social media within 10 minutes. I did not run. I did not cover my face. I walked with the rhythmic, measured click of my heels against the floor, dragging the suitcase Darlene had shoved at me. I walked straight into the bridal suite, closed the door, and locked it. It was no longer a dressing room, it was an interrogation chamber, and I was the investigator. My phone rang before I could even set the suitcase down. It was Elijah. Marin. Elijah's voice was tight, the sound of a man who had been holding his breath. They actually opened the show. Do I have your permission to activate Protocol Juniper? Do it, I said, my voice flat. Lock the accounts. Notify the Texas Secretary of State. I want every asset frozen before Gavin steps off that stage. Consider it done. Elijah replied. The notices are going out now. But, Marin, there is something else. You need to look at the access logs from Tuesday night. I hung up and threw the tablet onto the vanity table, swiping past the flood of condolence texts that were already pouring in. I pulled up the internal administrative logs for Brindle Crest Systems. My fingers flew across the glass. There it was. An email titled Approval of Voting Rights Transfer had been sent from my primary executive account. The timestamp read 2:17 in the morning on Tuesday. At 2:17 in the morning, I had been asleep in the bed I shared with Gavin, exhausted from wedding planning. I had not touched my laptop. How I whispered to the empty room. I drilled down into the security metadata. To send an email with that level of clearance, the system required two-factor authentication, a 6-digit code sent to my personal cell phone. I checked the log for the code delivery. Authentication code sent to device ending in 499. My blood ran cold. My number ended in 622. I ran a quick trace on the unknown number. It was a temporary VoIP line, a burner number registered 24 hours prior. The billing address for the credit card used to set up the line was obfuscated, but the recovery email address was visible in the raw data header. V. Rains, Find You Secure Server, Net, Victor, Rains. He had not just advised Gavin, he had cloned my digital identity. They had bypassed my phone, rerouted the security code to a device in Victor's pocket, and signed away my control of the company while I slept beside the man who claimed to love me. I kept scrolling, my heart hammering against my ribs not from heartbreak, but from the adrenaline of the hunt. I found a calendar invite that had been synced to the hidden administrative layer of the company server. Subject Northline Private Equity, Core IP Acquisition Signing. Time tomorrow, 9 o'clock in the morning. I stopped breathing for a second. They were not just trying to take the company, they were gutting it. Northline Private Equity was a chop shop. They bought distressed tech companies, stripped them of their patents and proprietary code, and sold the scraps. If Gavin signed that document tomorrow morning, the proprietary algorithms that made Brindle Crest Systems worth hundreds of millions of dollars would be gone. Even if I sued them later and won, there would be nothing left to recover. The company would be a hollow shell. They were betting on me being too emotionally devastated tonight to function. They expected me to be crying in a bathroom, drinking cheap wine, and calling my mother. They needed a 12-hour head start to finalize the theft. I looked up at the mirror. My reflection stared back pale, but eyes sharp as flint. The lipstick I wore was a deep crimson. I picked up the tube and reapplied it, tracing the curve of my lips with steady precision. They want me to collapse tonight, I said to the reflection, baring my teeth in a smile that did not reach my eyes. I will let them believe that. A soft, hesitant knock interrupted the silence of the room. It was not the pounding of an angry groom or the frantic rapping of a confused relative. It was the sound of someone who was not sure they wanted to be heard. I walked to the door and checked the peephole. Standing in the hallway, looking like she had just run through a storm, was Tessa Vale. She was the public relations manager for the Mercer family business, a woman whose job was to make sharks look like dolphins. Usually, she was impeccable, not a hair out of place. Tonight, her mascara was smeared beneath her eyes, and her hands were shaking. I unlocked the door and pulled it open. Tessa flinched as if I were about to strike her. She was clutching a silver USB drive in her hand so tightly her knuckles were white. I I didn't know they were going to do it like that, Tessa stammered, her voice barely a whisper. They told me it was just a breakup. They made me draft the press release 3 days ago. They wanted the headline to be, "Technocrat Bride Embezzles Future Husband's Fortune." I stepped back, allowing her to enter, then closed the door and locked it again. I did not offer her a tissue. I offered her silence. Tessa placed the USB drive on the vanity table next to my tablet. "This is the real ledger," she said, tears welling up again. Victor had me scrub the books for the public audit, but I kept a copy of the raw data. Look at the payments to Renfall Consulting. I picked up the drive and plugged it into my tablet. A new window popped up. I opened the file Tessa had indicated. It was a spreadsheet, raw and unfiltered. I scrolled down the list of outgoing wire transfers. There were dozens of payments to an entity named Renfall Consulting. $5,000 here, $10,000 there. The dates caught my eye immediately. August 12th. I read aloud. $15,000 for event sponsorship. August 12th was the weekend Gavin had told me he was in Chicago for a leadership retreat. The hotel bill on the screen showed a luxury resort in Cabo San Lucas. September 4th, I continued. $8,000 for strategic consultation. That was the weekend Gavin claimed his grandmother was sick. I highlighted the recipient field for Renfall Consulting. I ran a quick search on the Texas Business Registry database. Most people stop at the LLC name, but I knew how to dig for the registered agent and the leaseholder of the physical address. The address for Renfall Consulting was a small office unit in downtown Austin. The lease was not in Gavin's name. It was not in Victor's name. It was signed by Harold Mercer. I felt a cold smile touch my lips. The father who had laughed so loudly in the front row was not just a spectator. He was the landlord of the shell company used to siphon money out of my fiancé's accounts to make it look like I was the thief. "It is a family business," I murmured. Tessa nodded frantically. It isn't just Gavin. He is weak. Marin. He does what he is told. Darlene coordinates everything. She moves the people. Victor is the architect. He designed the legal structures to trap you. And Gavin. Gavin is just the face they put on the poster. She looked at me, her eyes pleading for some kind of absolution. "I can't go to jail. Marin," she sobbed, "I have a daughter. I just wrote the press releases. I didn't know about the shell company until I saw the wire transfers today." I looked at her. I could have comforted her. I could have told her it would be okay. But that would be a lie, and I was done with lies tonight. "I am not going to promise you safety," I said, my voice clinical, "but you are handing me this evidence voluntarily. That gives you a chance to survive. If I have to subpoena this from you later, you go down with them. If you give it to me now, you are a whistleblower." Tessa swallowed hard, then nodded. I understand. I picked up my phone and dialed Elijah. "We have a defector," I said the moment he answered. "Tessa Vale is in the room with me. She has the unredacted ledgers proving the Mercer family is funneling money to themselves. I will send a team to pick her up," Elijah said. "No," I cut in. "I want you to call a criminal defense attorney. Someone from outside our firm. Someone completely independent." Why Elijah asked. Because if she uses my lawyer, the court will say I coerced her testimony or bought her off. I explained, looking directly at Tessa. "I need her to be represented by a neutral third party. I want her affidavit to be bulletproof. Get someone there in 30 minutes. I hung up and looked back at the woman trembling in her expensive evening gown. "Sit down," I told her. "Do not text anyone. Do not leave this room. Tonight, you are not the PR manager. You are the most dangerous weapon in this building." I sat in the silence of the bridal suite, staring at the corporate structure chart on my tablet. Gavin liked to tell people he built Brindlecrest Systems from the ground up, that he was the visionary who turned code into gold. He believed the initial seed capital, $5 million that launched us 5 years ago, came from a reclusive angel investor in Dallas named Silas Wren. He was wrong. There was no Silas Wren. The money had come from my grandfather, a man who had spent 40 years building a logistics empire in the humid ports of Houston. When he passed, he left everything to me, hidden within a holding company I named Silver Wren Capital LLC. The documents proving I was the sole beneficiary and the true angel investor were not in Gavin's reach. They were sitting in a titanium safe in Elijah's office downtown. Gavin had spent 5 years trying to impress an investor who was actually sleeping on the other side of his bed. My mind flashed back to 3 months ago. A Sunday brunch at the Mercer estate. The memory was sharp, crystalline. I was sitting on the patio, the Texas sun beating down. Darlene had slid an iPad across the table toward me, her manicured nails tapping on the glass. It is just the venue liability forms. Darling. Darlene had purred, her voice dripping with artificial honey. We cannot book the florist until the bride signs off on the insurance waivers. Just press your thumb here and sign at the bottom. I remembered hesitating. I remembered reaching for the tablet. And then I remembered Gavin. He had been sitting right next to me, holding his phone up, ostensibly taking a photo of us for Instagram. Smile, babe. He had said, You look gorgeous. I realized it now with a sickening jolt. He had not been taking a photo of my face. He had been recording the high-resolution motion of my hand signing the digital pad. He had been capturing the biometric data of my fingerprint as it pressed against the sensor. That was how they did it. They did not hack my password. They physically stole my identity while I was eating Eggs Benedict and planning our future. I minimized the chart and pulled up the prenuptial agreement draft the Mercer family lawyers had sent over last month. At the time, I had skimmed it, trusting Gavin when he said it was standard boilerplate to protect us both. Now, I read the fine print in Section 14, Paragraph C. In the event that one party engages in public conduct that causes demonstrable, irreversible reputational damage to the shared business entity, all voting rights associated with said party shall automatically transfer to the aggrieved partner to ensure corporate stability. I let out a short, dry laugh. It was brilliant in its cruelty. The breakup on stage was not an emotional outburst. It was a legal trigger, by accusing me of fraud in front of a live stream audience. Gavin had manufactured the reputational damage necessary to activate this clause. He was not just leaving me. He was using the breakup to legally seize my controlling interest in the company before the wedding even happened. They think they have checkmated me, I whispered to the mirror. But they had forgotten where we were. We were in Texas. And in Texas. A contract signed under duress, or a clause activated through fraudulent manufacturing of circumstances, is not just voidable, it is a declaration of war. I picked up my phone and typed a message to Elijah. My fingers moved with the precision of a pianist. Prepare an emergency temporary restraining order. This is not a divorce filing. This is a petition for asset preservation and an injunction against the transfer of intellectual property. I want the judge to block the Northline deal immediately based on evidence of identity theft and fraud. I watched the 3 dots appear as Elijah typed back instantly. The judge is on rotation tonight. I can get him to sign within the hour if I send the evidence now. How do you want to serve Gavin? I can have a process server wait at his hotel. I looked at the live stream still playing on the muted television in the corner. Gavin was still on stage, accepting the consolations of his family, looking like a tragic prince. He loved the spotlight. He loved the audience. I typed my reply. No hotel. Bring the process server here. I want the papers served to him directly on the stage. I hit send. He wanted a show. I said, standing up and smoothing my dress, I am going to give him a finale. The automatic doors of Brindlecrest Systems parted at 7 o'clock in the morning. I walked into the lobby, the heels of my boots striking the polished marble like gunshots. The security guard, a man named Davis who had smiled at me every morning for 3 years, stepped out from behind the desk. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Ms. Calloway, Davis said. raising a hand to block my path. I am sorry, Mr. Mercer left strict instructions last night. He said your access badges were to be deactivated immediately pending an internal investigation. I did not slow down. I reached into my purse and pulled out a matte black keycard. It did not bear the logo of Brindlecrest Systems. It bore the silver crest of the building's owner, Silver Wren Capital LLC. Gavin Mercer manages the tenant. Davis, I said, my voice cool and level. I own the building. Unless you want to explain to the board why you barred the landlord from her own property, you will step aside. Davis hesitated, looked at the card, and then stepped back, his face pale. I swiped the card at the turnstile. The light turned green. I went straight to the 4th floor, bypassing the executive suite entirely. I headed for the server room. Noah Sutter, the head of IT, was already there. He was a brilliant, nervous man who I had saved from a massive budget cut 2 years ago when Gavin wanted to outsource his department to an overseas firm. Noah had not forgotten. Marin Noah spun around in his chair, his eyes wide behind his glasses. I saw the news, the live stream. It is everywhere. Are you okay? I am working, I said, dropping my bag on a desk. And so are you. Initiate emergency governance access. Authorization code Alpha 09. Noah did not ask questions. He turned back to his console, his fingers flying across the mechanical keyboard, bypassing standard admin protocols. Noah muttered, locking out all remote sessions? Wait. He stopped, staring at the lines of code scrolling down his monitor. What is it I asked? Leaning over his shoulder. Someone is mirroring your laptop, Noah said, his voice dropping. It is not just a login. They have a live feed of your hard drive. Every file you open, they see, trace the IP. I ordered. It is routed through a proxy, Noah said, typing furiously. But they got sloppy with the handshake protocol. Give me a second. Got it. The physical address is in downtown Austin. He pulled up a map. It was not Gavin's house. It was a high-rise office building on Congress Avenue, the office of Victor Raines. Before I could respond, the glass door to the server room burst open. Lena Hart, our CFO, ran in. She was usually the most composed woman in the building, but now her hair was messy and she was clutching a stack of papers. Marin Lena gasped, out of breath. Thank God you are here. I tried to call you. The system just flagged a pending wire transfer. How much I asked. $1,900,000, Lena said. It is marked as an expedited payment for software licensing rights to Renfall Consulting. It is scheduled to clear at 11 o'clock this morning. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 8:15. If that money leaves, Lena said, her voice shaking, we miss payroll on Friday. The operating account will be dry. The company will be insolvent by the weekend. Call the bank, I said. Stop it. I already did, Lena cried. They said the transfer was authorized with your digital signature and Gavin's approval code. It is in the ACH clearing queue. They said they cannot stop a valid transaction without a court order. Get them back on the line. I commanded. Put it on speaker. Lena dialed with trembling fingers. The bank representative answered after 2 rings. This is Corporate Treasuries. How may I help you? This is Marin Calloway, I said, leaning close to the phone. I am the majority shareholder of Brindlecrest Systems. You have a transfer pending for $1,900,000 to Renfall Consulting. You need to freeze it immediately. Ms. Calloway. As we explained to Ms. Hart, the representative said, their voice bored and bureaucratic. The transaction has valid authorization tokens. We cannot intervene in internal disputes without a judicial decree. Listen to me very carefully, I said, lowering my voice to a dangerous whisper. I am formally notifying you that the recipient, Renfall Consulting, is a shell entity with no physical operations. If you process this transfer, You are facilitating a transaction that has been flagged for investigation regarding money laundering and wire fraud. Do you want your compliance officer to explain to the feds why you ignored a direct fraud alert? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. The bored tone vanished. Please hold, the representative said. I am escalating this to the fraud department. We will place a temporary 48-hour hold on the funds pending review. I signaled Lena to hang up. She collapsed into a chair, exhaling a long breath. We bought time, I said, looking at Noah, but not enough. I checked my watch. We have less than 3 hours. I told them, Gavin has a call with Northline Private Equity at 11:30. He is going to use that call to sell the company out from under us before the bank unfreezes that money. He thinks he is holding a royal flush. I smoothed my skirt, my eyes fixing on the scrolling code on Noah's screen. He is about to find out. The deck is marked. The elevator doors to the executive floor slid open with a soft chime that felt like the bell signaling the start of a boxing match. Gavin stepped out, flanked by his parents and a woman in a charcoal suit I recognized immediately as Avery Calder, a litigator known for scorching earth rather than finding common ground. Victor Raines trailed behind them, silent and watchful, holding a leather briefcase. Gavin marched straight toward the glass conference room where I stood waiting. He did not look like the man who had abandoned me on stage 12 hours ago. He looked like a CEO who had been wronged. He made sure to raise his voice so the employees in the open plan office could hear every word. This is the woman who is trying to steal my life's work, Gavin announced, pointing an accusing finger at me. He turned to the stunned staff. She has locked us out of the servers to sabotage the investment deal that would save your jobs. She is vindictive, and she is dangerous. He slammed his hands onto the glass table, leaning in close to my face. Unlock the system. Marin, Gavin hissed. We have a call with Northline in 2 hours. You will not destroy this company just because you are heartbroken. I did not flinch. I did not raise my voice. I simply slid a single sheet of paper across the polished mahogany table. I am not heartbroken. Gavin, I am the majority shareholder, I said calmly. This is the capitalization table. Silver Wren Capital owns 51% of the voting stock. You own 30%. The rest is distributed among the employees you are currently lying to. Gavin glanced at the paper, his face reddening. Before he could speak, his mother stepped forward. Darlene looked at me with a sneer that twisted her perfectly made-up face. Oh, honey, Darlene said, her voice dripping with condescension. Stop playing business. You are just a jilted bride who got left at the altar. Nobody cares about your little shell companies. You are a guest in my son's house. I looked Darlene dead in the eye. Get this through your head. Darlene, I said, my voice cutting through the air like a blade. I am not a guest. In this building, I am the signature. The room went silent. Avery Calder, the lawyer, stepped in, placing a hand on Gavin's arm to restrain him. Ms. Calloway, Avery said, her tone smooth and lethal. We are not here to debate percentages. We are here to offer you a choice. Gavin straightened his jacket and pulled a thick digital tablet from his bag. He held it up, showing the screen. It was a file titled Internal Revenue Investigation Dossier. I expected you to pull the shareholder card, Gavin said, a smug grin returning to his face. So I prepared this. It is a full report detailing how you, allegedly, manipulated revenue recognition to inflate the company's value before the audit. I stared at the tablet. I knew the numbers were clean, but an accusation alone, leaked to the press or the SEC, would freeze our accounts for months. The stock would plummet. The company would be toxic. This goes to the Wall Street Journal and the SEC in 1 hour. Gavin threatened, if you block the Northline deal, I press send. I will burn this place to the ground before I let you keep it. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was a suicide vest. He was willing to destroy the company just to hurt me. I gripped the edge of the table, letting my shoulders slump slightly, feigning the panic he wanted to see. You can't, I stammered, looking down. My phone, resting on the table, buzzed with a single vibration. I glanced down without moving my head. It was a text from Noah. I am tracking the file he is holding. It is encrypted with a rolling 24-hour key. Gavin does not have the administrative rights to open it or send it. He is bluffing. I looked up. Gavin was smiling, confident he had the trigger in his hand, but then my eyes shifted past him. I looked at Victor Rains. Victor was not smiling. He was watching me with intense, calculating eyes. He was not looking at Gavin. He was checking his watch. And then I realized the truth. Gavin did not have the key to the encryption. Gavin was just the delivery boy holding the bomb. The man who actually held the detonator, the only one smart enough to code the encryption and control the release, was standing quietly in the back. It is not your file. Is it Gavin? I asked softly. I looked directly at Victor. The financial advisor shifted his weight, just a fraction of an inch. The gun isn't in your hand, I said to Gavin, but my eyes never left Victor. You are just the one making the noise. I left the main conference room, the sound of Gavin's threats fading behind the heavy glass doors. The adrenaline was still pumping through my veins, but I forced my breathing to slow. I needed to be ice. I walked down the corridor to the smaller breakout room, the one we usually reserved for private client calls. Victor Rains was there. He was sitting at the round table, his phone pressed to his ear, a notepad open in front of him. He looked like a man putting out a fire, not the arsonist who had started it. When he saw me, he murmured a quick goodbye and hung up. "Marin," Victor said, his voice smooth, reasonable, and utterly devoid of guilt. I was just trying to calm the board members. Look, I know you are hurt, but do not turn a personal issue into a company crisis. We can structure a buyout for you. You can walk away with dignity and a very healthy bank account. I pulled out the chair opposite him and sat down. I did not scream. I did not accuse. I reached into my pocket and placed the silver USB drive Tessa had given me onto the center of the table. It made a soft click against the wood. "Tell me about Renfall Consulting, Victor," I said softly. Victor blinked. It was a micro-reaction, a tiny twitch of the muscle beneath his left eye. But in the silence of the room, it was a scream. "I am not sure what you mean," he said, leaning back, crossing his hands. "I manage dozens of vendor accounts." "I had Noah cross-reference the wire instructions," I said, bluffing slightly about the speed of the result, but knowing the truth was solid. "Renfall Consulting shares a mailing address with one of your legitimate firms, Rains and Associates. Same suite, same post office box." Victor stayed silent, his face a mask of polite confusion. "And the beneficiary of the trust that owns Renfall." I continued, leaning forward. "It is not Gavin. It is Harold Mercer." Victor's fingers tightened on his pen. "It is a family business," I whispered. "Harold provides the shell. Darlene provides the strategy. Gavin provides the face. And you provide the mechanics." Victor chuckled, a dry, dismissive sound. "You have a vivid imagination, Marin, but you have no proof that holds up in court, and in 2 hours, the Northline deal signs, and the IP is gone. You are fighting a ghost." I looked at my phone. I needed him to panic. I needed him to make a mistake. "You think you have 2 hours?" I said. "But you should really listen to what Gavin's lawyer is saying right now." I tapped the screen, playing a recording I had captured just moments ago in the hallway, where I had planted a second device near the coat rack. The voice of Avery Calder, Gavin's shark of a lawyer, cut through the air, tinny but clear. "The judge is reviewing the emergency motion right now. If she gets that signature in the next 20 minutes, we are dead in the water. We cannot sign if there is a pending order." I watched Victor. The calm professional veneer cracked. His eyes darted to the clock. He believed the timeline had just collapsed from hours to minutes. "It does not matter," Victor snapped, his voice losing its polish. "We do not need the office. We just need the notary to sign, and it is done. Click." I tapped the screen again, stopping the recording app I had running in the background. "Thank you, Victor," I said, standing up. Victor froze. He realized instantly what he had said. He had confirmed they were bypassing standard protocol. I walked out of the room before he could say another word. My hands were shaking, but I typed the message to Elijah with steady thumbs. "They are not signing here. They are using an outside notary. Mobile closing. They are going to try a bundled signing to backdate the transfer. Get the process server ready." I looked down the hall at the main conference room where Gavin was still posturing. He thought the war was happening in there. He didn't know I had just won the battle in the hallway. The phone in my hand vibrated with a violence that made me jump. It was a text from Tessa, hidden somewhere in the building, risking her career and her freedom to send me one line of text. "Location change. They are at Lark and Pine Title Services. Northline reps are there. Notary is waiting." I stared at the screen. Lark and Pine was a boutique closing firm on the edge of town, the kind of place that specialized in high-volume real estate transactions. Suddenly, the strategy became crystal clear. They were not just signing the IP transfer, they were doing a double closing. They would sign the papers to refund the wedding venue and the house down payment first, legitimate, standard paperwork, and then slip the intellectual property transfer into the stack. They were using the notary's stamp on the first document to lend a veneer of legitimacy to the theft in the second. My phone rang again. It was Elijah. "We have it," Elijah said, his voice breathless. The judge signed the temporary restraining order. "We have a full asset freeze and an injunction against any transfer of intellectual property. But Marin, I need to know where to send the process server. If they sign before he touches them with those papers, we are fighting a messy battle to unwind a completed contract." "Do not send him to the title company," I said, my mind racing, calculating the distance, the time, and the psychology of the people I was fighting. If you corner them in a private office, they will shred the papers and claim they never saw them. They will lie. Then where Elijah asked, "Time is bleeding out. Send the server to the Cypress and Gold Pavilion," I said. "The theater," Elijah asked, confused. "Why would they go back there? Because they are narcissists." I replied, "And because I am about to give them the one thing they want more than money. I am going to give them a public victory." I hung up and dialed Gavin. He answered on the first ring, likely expecting me to be begging. "Make it quick." "Marin," Gavin said, "I am in a meeting. I am done fighting," I said, forcing a tremor into my voice. I talked to the board. I realized, I cannot win this. I want to settle. "Smart girl," Gavin sneered. "Send the release forms." "No," I said. "I want to do it right. I want to apologize. Publicly. I called the venue. The live stream equipment is still set up. Meet me there in 30 minutes. I will sign whatever you want, and I will tell everyone that you were right. Bring the Northline people. Let them see that the company is stable." There was a pause. I could practically hear his ego inflating. He didn't just want the company. He wanted the exoneration. He wanted to be the hero who graciously accepted the apology of the crazy ex-fiancé. 30 minutes, Gavin said. "If you are 1 minute late, I burn you." I lowered the phone and turned to Noah. "Lock the outbound email servers," I ordered. "Block any file attachment larger than 1 megabyte. I know Gavin will try to email the signed docs from his phone if things go wrong, but we can slow him down." "It is done," Noah said, typing fast. "But Marin, you are walking into a firing squad. I know," I said. I reached into my bag and checked my inventory. I had 3 knives, and they were sharper than anything Gavin could imagine. First, the IT logs proving the biometric identity theft. Second, the wire transfer spreadsheet linking the shell company to his father. Third, the recording of Victor admitting they were bypassing legal protocol. I snapped my briefcase shut. The sound echoed in the empty office. They want me torn apart on stage, I said, looking at the door. So I will let the law take the stage first. The stage lights were just as blinding as they had been 24 hours ago. Gavin stood at the center of the platform, gripping the microphone with the easy confidence of a man who believed the world was his audience. He looked down at me, then out at the gathered crowd, which included the Northline executives and his entire family. Marin has come here to correct the narrative, Gavin announced, his voice smooth. She admits that her actions yesterday were emotional. She is ready to sign the transfer and step aside for the good of the company. For the second time, the Mercer family stood up. Harold clapped his hands, a smug rhythm that echoed in the theater. Darlene wiped a fake tear from her eye. They were applauding my submission. I walked up the stairs. I stood next to Gavin. I looked at the table where the contracts were laid out, ready for signatures. I looked at Gavin, who was holding a pen out to me. I smiled. It was the exact same smile I had worn the night before. Sure, I said into the microphone. You won. Gavin exhaled, his shoulders dropping in relief. He turned to the Northline representatives and beamed. Let's get this done, he said, reaching for the paper. At that exact moment, a man in a cheap gray suit walked out from the wings of the stage. He did not look like a wedding guest. He looked like the law. He walked straight up to Gavin and slapped a thick stack of documents onto the table. Right on top of the investment contract. Gavin Mercer, the man shouted, his voice projecting without a microphone. You are served. By order of the District Court of Travis County. All assets of Brindlecrest Systems are frozen effectively immediately. There is a temporary injunction against the transfer of any intellectual property pending a fraud investigation. The room went deadly silent. What is this? The lead representative from Northline asked, standing up. It is evidence, Elijah said, stepping out from the shadows behind the process server. He handed a tablet to the Northline rep. These are the IT logs from the night the voting rights were transferred. The digital signature was created at 2:17 in the morning. At that time, Marin Calloway was at a public charity gala, verified by security footage. The signature originated from a device that does not belong to her. Gavin turned pale. That is a mistake. Is it? I asked. I signaled to the sound booth. A projected image appeared on the massive screen behind us. It was the wire instruction sheet for Renfall Consulting. You claimed I was hiding money, I said, my voice echoing through the hall. But here is the beneficiary for the consulting firm you have been paying thousands of dollars to every month. It is a trust. I pointed to the bottom of the screen. And the trustee is Harold Mercer. Harold stopped clapping. He sank into his chair, his face turning a sickly shade of gray. The audience gasped. The Northline executives pulled the contract away from Gavin's reach. You are all in on it, I said. It is not just a bad breakup. It is a conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Lies, Victor Raines shouted, stepping forward from the back. This is all circumstantial. Is it? Victor, I asked. I pressed a button on my phone, which was connected to the speaker system. Victor's voice, recorded only 30 minutes ago, boomed through the theater. We do not need the office. We just need the notary to sign, and it is done. I held up the mailing address comparison. You share an office with the shell company. I told Victor. You built the trap, but you forgot to wipe your fingerprints. Darlene screamed. She lunged toward me, her hands curled into claws, desperate to grab the microphone and stop the truth. Cut the feed, she shrieked. Shut her up. She didn't make it 3 steps. 2 large security guards, men I had hired personally that morning, stepped in her path. They didn't touch her, they just blocked her like a wall. She bounced off them, powerless. The Northline representative looked at Gavin, then at me, and finally at the stack of court documents. We are withdrawing our offer immediately, he stated. He gathered the unsigned contracts and the evidence Elijah had provided. We will be retaining these documents to cooperate with the authorities. Gavin stood alone under the spotlight. He looked at the empty table. He looked at Victor, who was frantically typing on his phone, likely trying to destroy evidence that was already backed up on my server. Gavin reached for his pocket, for the tablet with the dossier he had threatened me with. But then his hand stopped. He realized it was useless. He couldn't release the file without the key. And the man holding the key was currently being circled by corporate lawyers. He looked at me, his eyes hollow, stripped of all arrogance. He was not a director anymore. He was just a man who had signed his own confession. I leaned into the microphone one last time. "You canceled our wedding on this stage to turn me into a joke," I said, my voice steady and final. "I just did one thing. I brought the court to the stage to turn your joke into a criminal record." The stage lights cut to black. The applause died instantly. The silence that followed was heavy, permanent, and sealed like a red wax stamp. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please comment your location below so we can connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to the Lily Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit the hype button to help this story be heard by even more people.